Georgia Tech with a stunner. And DJ Uiagalelei, yeah, he's got to bear some of this blame.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How about them Yellow Jackets? Welcome, everybody, to a reaction episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. That's Brian Smith, Locked On Seminoles. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view post Georgia Tech, 10.5-point underdog, pulling the upset in Ireland. This episode brought to you by our friends at Ultimate College Football HC. Brand new mobile game that's completely free, has no ads, 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. We'll talk about Georgia Tech later in today's show. Are they legit in the ACC? And a news story in college football we're going to discuss. But let's start with the big game, Brian. I watched this game, and DJ Uiagalelei is dinking and dunking the ball and can't complete a pass down the field, except for the one drive where they went down to tie the game. You put some of this blame certainly on Mike Norvell. The lines of scrimmage were dominated by Georgia Tech, to be sure. But I said going into the year, Florida State cannot win a national championship with DJU at quarterback. We saw why today.
I don't disagree with the national title thing. I completely disagree on DJ being the main issue. I knew from fall camp and talking to people over the summer, they had issues at receiver. They knew going in they weren't throwing it down the field a ton. They expected Georgia Tech to take a lot of chances, and they did. They had to. The few times they played like man on that drive where DJ threw the money balls, man coverage, they don't have the corners to do it. So they blitzed. DJ's not the most mobile guy in the world. He's okay in the pocket, but their offensive line stunk. That's the part nobody saw coming. Just complete bust. Byers at right tackle in the first half. That was
not good. Not good.
He's a guard playing tackle at the college. He has a chance to play pro football at right guard. He will never sniff tackle again, based on what I saw in the first half. By the way, shout out Romello Height.
I was about to say his name.
Holy moly. He had 4 sacks last year for Southern Cal. So he's a good player, but he just made some money.
Ball player.
Yeah, he's going to be like an ACC second team guy or something. You could see it a mile away. He destroyed Florida State today. Once that happened, they don't have somebody else for Byers. They put him in. They don't have somebody. And I think once they saw that, they're like, except for going max protect, they threw a couple deep balls they didn't connect on. They didn't have faith in their offensive line. I don't think there's a fix for this. So the problem, unfortunately, isn't that I'm necessarily right over you on this. They don't have a fix. They have a major problem on the right side, and he has a ton of experience. This is one of the most experienced offensive lines in all of college football. He
might have just had a bad day against a good football player, but regardless,
that was his problem last year too.
They're gonna when you play Miami's defensive line,
they're in trouble.
You better not play like that. You better not play like that. Now, I will offer a silver lining or an olive branch to Florida State fans here. The season is not over in the 12-team playoff. There just have to be changes. You have to find a more reliable passing game, and you've got to fix the offensive line. And holy smokes, Brian, they've got to fix the defensive line.
That was bizarre.
I did not expect Florida State's defensive line to be as good as last year when it had guys like Jared Verse who went off to the NFL. But they reloaded in the transfer portal as well as anybody in college football. And they got absolutely dog walked. That Georgia Tech offensive line fundamentally won this football game. Get this, Brian. You want a Josh Pate style padlock stat? 190 to 98. That was the rushing yards disparity from Georgia Tech to Florida State in this ball game.
That's the mild one. I've got 2 far worse.
Hit me.
Haynes King only threw 16 passes and they won. That's number 1. Number 2, top of your head without looking, how many tackles for loss and sacks did the Noles have?
1. They had 1.
They had 3 by the stat that I'm looking at. Depends on which
one. But one of them was a fumbled snap.
Exactly. They could not get penetration much. Lundy had the one early in the third quarter, shot the gap, tremendous play, and then there was like one other that was legit. Georgia Tech was better up front. We knew they were going to have a pretty good offensive line, but Florida State has NFL players up front. So this tells me 2 things. And one, I saw coming a mile away. I don't care if you threaten to beat them. You are not going to get a team up for Georgia Tech, first game of the year after an undefeated season. That's not – I know Florida State fans don't want to hear it, and I get it. This happens every year. When a team comes off a mid-level season, and it's been a while since Tech's been good, let's be honest, you're not going to get 100% out of your players. That was a problem. And number two, something you and I talked about briefly on one of your shows a month or two ago, Florida State expects to make the playoff. I think based on how poorly they tackled and how lack of physical they were, I don't think they hit that much in fall camp to the ground and stuff like that. And it showed. Georgia Tech did more than Florida State did. I guarantee you, based on what we just watched.
Yeah, I mean, the trenches were really dominated on both sides by Georgia Tech. And I don't think Georgia Tech's offensive line and pass protection was incredible. I thought that's where Florida State, showed that defensive line muscle that we saw. And Haynes King just made some really plays. But boy, Brent Key, former offensive lineman. Again, we're going to get to the Jackets more later in the show. Brent Key as an offensive lineman had to be grinning ear to ear. In fact, he was. He said, run the ball after the game, gave Haynes King a big old hug. How about the kicker coming through with a 44-yard? How about Florida State's kicker? Just as a couple notes there. Kicking college
yards, bro.
Oh, man. Oh, those were some kicks. Those were some stones.
He's going to get paid.
Oh, yeah, those were some big-time kicks, but it wasn't enough. End of the day, you and I both predicted the exact same score coming into this game, and we both thought Georgia Tech would keep it close in the first half, but that FSU would pull away in the second half, but they had no offense. They had no passing game, which is why I go back to DJU and why I had the take I did on him over the summer. Even though I liked FSU's offseason, and they brought in a really good transfer portal class, that veteran Georgia Tech offensive line leaned into those newcomers, and it looked, as you said, Brian, like they just weren't hitting because they were not ready. From the jump, the very first play that Georgia Tech ran, I mean, they washed down the offensive line, and I could have run through that whole, now not for as many yards, of course, because I'm incredibly slow. I'd probably have a 5.8 time. But I just was so taken aback by, wow, this is the Florida State program? I know it's not the exact same team, but this is the program that just won the ACC, that just wanted to be in the 14 playoff and whatnot. And I think if you're a Florida State fan, you're taking it on the chin today. The season's not over, but there are so many things that have to be corrected. The passing game, the defensive line not getting moved around in the run game, those would be the two biggest things I think Florida State has got to fix. But this is a pretty disastrous start for Mike Norvell and company.
There is no walking it back. And Mike's a good guy. I think that's pretty obvious based on everything I've been told and how he presents himself. There's no nice way for him to go into this press conference.
No.
He cannot do the following and it be congruent. Be honest and keep his team. Because if he's honest, every one of his players up front are going to hate him. They sucked. There were 2 or 3 plays in the first 3 or 4 drives where guys didn't come in to make a play or hit deep. They didn't get touched until beyond, what are you doing? This offensive line has a gazillion miles of experience. This is a player problem. I know fans really hate hearing that because you can't fix that real quick. There is no shortcut. And a lot of them are seniors, 5th-year seniors. We got a player problem. How do you have all these guys come back, have worked together, going against a unit that you are better than, even though what we saw, and just have mental errors? Forget physicality. When guys go scot-free, they can suck. They're going to screw up the passing game or the running game. You want a really bad stat? One of the things that I track in games that I'm really interested, number one thing on my stat sheet, what do you do on first down runs? What do you think, Spencer, Florida State was in the second half on first down runs? This is pathetic.
They had to be under 3 yards a carry.
They had a total of 5 carries on first downs. They had to throw it a little more in the second half. That's fine. 5 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard, 3 yards, loss of 3. So they had 8 yards on 5 carries, 1.6 yards per tote. That is pathetic.
That's bad. That's bad. And that's your ball game right there. But this is not just this is not just a Florida State laid an egg. Georgia Tech came ready to play. We got to talk about the Yellow Jackets and how well they played. How real is Brent Key's team? That's coming up next. Hey, Locked On College Football fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love, Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets right now? That'd be a pretty fun thing because Brent Key is probably feeling himself right now in the best possible way. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. It's all in your hands. Everything that you do, including play calling during the games, your strategy is going to shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC, completely free, no ads, playable offline. You can take it with you on the go. And of course, we have a special offer for you. Locked On College Football fans, use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. On the one side, Brian, disaster for Florida State to begin their 2024 campaign, but holy smokes, Georgia Tech was impressive. And certainly Florida State did not play the way that on paper they are capable of. We'll see if they rebound and how they rebound throughout the course of this year. But my goodness, from the opening drive, Florida State goes down the field. And you think, okay, here we go. Yeah, Florida State's going to take. And Georgia Tech had a response over and over and over again. Haynes King was phenomenal. Took care of the football. Almost fumbled it once. Actually, almost fumbled it twice. But was able to get back on the ball. I mean, he was great. The offensive line was spectacular. I was really impressed with this Georgia Tech team. This didn't look like a fluke, like they're going to end the year 5-7 and you look back and go, oh wow, how did they beat Florida State? No, this Georgia Tech team is one that people are going to have to pay attention to.
I think that they've given their blueprint is the only thing that they've done that is unfortunate for them. They're going to see some stacked defenses, and it's obvious they do not trust their O-line and pass protection. And based on the limited supply, I don't think they should. But Florida State's front can really rush the passer too. So they're going to have some struggles with that at some points, but you're not going to out-tough them. You're certainly not going to just out-skill. They got speed at receiver. And I tell you what, Haynes is fast, can catch. He is a pain. He's probably one of the smaller guys. It's ironic. He plays a little bit like Warwick Dunn, old school Florida State player, similar size. They are annoying. I just read a quote from Saban from Game Day talking about they were my sleeper pick, this and that. That Nick Saban guy might have a future. But at the same time, like everything about the way they played to their strengths. They came in all in knowing they weren't going to pass protect well against Florida State. They admitted it. They just played to their strengths. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. Here we come, try and stop us. Little side note, you mentioned well done by Haynes King. It's one thing to see a guy like him in practice and you have somebody on the scout team that tries to resemble. You can't do it. He is ridiculously fast. There were 2 or 3 times Florida State had the edge, and the guy didn't even touch him.
He just ran around.
I mean, they did everything right, and he got outside.
Yeah.
That is really hard to suck up because there could have been a couple, like most quarterbacks, that's 2nd and 13, 2nd and 15. It was 2nd and 7, 2nd and 5. That's the difference between night and day. Hats off. And there were a few plays, too. He just grinded it out where he got shellacked. And he still got an extra yard. He still fell forward. If you're a Georgia Tech fan, you got to tip your cap to him. As you and I noted last week, he had 16 picks last year. Not exactly good. No turnovers, and he was resilient and led a resilient team with no turnovers, and they win at the end. It's a great turnaround and a great story for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, he was a highly touted recruit, one-time Texas A&M commit for a reason. I think he really put that on display. And sure, there were some havoc moments because the offensive line was not doing amazing in pass protection, but he made plays. He made big throws when he needed to. I thought his best throw of the day was, I think it was like a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11 or so when the game was tied, and he hits the guy over the middle. Ball was right on the money, but this is the big, yeah, and he got hit. Like he was fantastic. But I want to talk about Brent Key here because he takes over as the interim a couple of years ago. They hire him as the full-time. He has a solid year 1. We recently talked about the recruiting win they had in the 25 cycle with 5-star offensive tackle Josh Petty. This is the biggest win of his career. I mean, this is not Miami didn't take a knee, so you get to go down and have a miracle win. No, this is you. You showed up at the same time, same place. All was good. Like conditions were whatever they were. They just showed up and beat them. I mean, this is a statement victory from Brent Key to go to Ireland, beat the preseason number 10 team in the country. That's a big time marker for the Yellow Jackets.
I think it's a great story because it shows that it doesn't take that long, especially with the portal, to change things. He's made good decisions with the offseason on how they attacked it. Okay, like we said a minute ago, offensive line, really good running, not so much with the pass protection, so let's lean on that. So that's a good thing they worked on. But they also went out, they had problems on defense. Getting Romello Height, how good does that look now?
How about the defensive coordinator, Tyler Santucci? I mean,
good for him, man.
He was in his bag today.
Yeah, he called some really good blitzes. There was a overhead shot that ESPN does. We don't get enough of these. It's not the same as all 20, which is vertical. They were just in a soft cover 2 shell. The safety at the very last second. Remember now, DJ's a grad student. He's seen everything. Starts charging down, and they rotate into one high safety man defense. That's NFL stuff. You don't see that out of Georgia Tech very often. They don't have very good defense. And Florida State didn't adjust. That was a 3rd down critical play, and they got to stop. That's how you win games. That's why you get paid a lot of money. For the record, he's an Elko disciple. He was at Notre Dame, went to Tech, or went to A&M, then went with him to Duke DC last year when they were good. Now he's at Tech. This guy won't be at Tech long, is my guess. Somebody's going to pay him a lot of money in the SEC, I bet.
Yeah, he had a phenomenal game. He held DJ under 200 yards passing. And, I mean, to hold the Florida State offense, you and I had the game score prediction 34-21 in favor of FSU. And pretty darn close with what we expected from Georgia Tech within a field goal. But for Florida State and to have a former 5-star quarterback and, Malik Benson at wide receiver and Roydell Williams in the backfield and the offensive line they've got, to hold them to 21 points, that was just a masterclass, I thought, from Tyler Santucci, because he was phenomenal and Georgia Tech was really good across the board. But let's look to the next step, Brian, for Georgia Tech. They should be ranked next week when the new AP poll comes out. You beat the preseason number 10 team, you better be at least inside the top 15, because that didn't feel overly fluky to me. That felt like, yeah, they just went out on the field and showed they can play with a team who people expect to be at an ACC championship sort of level. I think Georgia Tech, if you look up and say they won 8-9 games at the end of the year, I won't be surprised.
I don't think they'll be top 15 for 2 reasons. People have things in their head. They just still won't believe it. That's just college football people are stubborn. Whether you're right or wrong, I'm not saying. My guess is they won't be, but I'm not saying you're wrong. I just know enough voters are pretty stubborn. But you're right. This is a chance for a team to kind of turn the program around. By the way, recruiting ought to be better for Georgia Tech moving forward. It's pretty easy to sell. I can only imagine the pamphlets they're going to mail out this week.
Yeah.
Because they recruit against Florida State constantly in the Atlanta area. Constantly. But to your point, though, overall, don't discount them being a contender in the ACC now. If you can grind out and hit with Florida State, why can't you grind out and hit it? I have no idea what their schedule is as far as the ACC.
It's brutal. It's incredibly brutal. But I mean, you have a head-to-head now with Florida State, so you could drop 2 games in league play and still be ahead of the Seminoles there. Their season's going to be defined in the end of October to early November. Listen to this stretch, Brian. Notre Dame at home, at Virginia Tech, and then hosting Miami and NC State. You go 2-2 in those games, boy, it feels like you're doing something right. They also have to play Georgia the last week of the regular season on the road, so I'm going to put that one in the loss column still. But I would have put this Florida State game in the loss column, but Georgia's much better than Florida State for many reasons. So they've got at least one loss on there, but if they go 2-2 in that stretch, if they bring this level of play every week, gosh, 8-4, 9-3 feels like it's really, really attainable. And boy, that would be an outstanding mark for the Yellow Jackets.
I think it is obtainable. Here's the biggest key for them. And I hate saying this out loud because I feel like I'm a harbinger of things to come for any team. What's the number one predictor of wins and losses, Spencer? It's the category that Vegas wants college football to make mandatory. injury report.
Oh, injury reports. Yeah, I was getting. I was on yards per play first, but then you said make mandatory. Injury reports.
It's injuries.
Yeah.
When you play that stretch that you just mentioned, Notre Dame is a super physical team. NC State's a super physical team. Like they're going to get beat up. 2-2, I think, would be optimal. They're not going to be the same team. Although if they beat Florida State today, there's going to be attrition. The chances of them playing as good next week, I have no idea who they even play. Don't care.
Georgia State. Georgia State.
They got a really good guy who was coaching at Georgia, but whatever. They're going to beat them, but they're not going to play near as well. How you revolve yourself around this, taking that attrition's part of it. And here's the other. They were the hunter today against Georgia State and a bunch of other teams. What are they going to be, Spencer?
The hunted. Yeah.
It's a different mindset. We'll see if they can do it.
Man, what a win. What a win. We have a non-game piece of news to talk about because there's a report from Ross Dellenger. The spring transfer portal window might be going away. Brian has very strong thoughts on that. We'll talk about it next. After we talk about Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks allows you to curate whatever you want, so it makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you are looking for. You can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. They've got their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Brian, let's wrap with a report that came from Ross Dellenger that the spring transfer portal window might soon be going away. Once again, this shows me that the decision makers in college football just always have the wrong solutions. The spring portal window is not the one that I think needs to go away. You could argue for moving the timeline. That's fine. It's the winter transfer portal window that is the problem here, because you have got, look at last year. Malik Murphy was the backup quarterback for Texas, but he had to transfer because he wanted to go find a home so that he can be the starting quarterback for Duke this year. You should do away with the winter portal, and then if you want to move the timing of the spring portal, that's fine. That's where I come down on this. Now, this is not confirmed. This is something that is being discussed amongst the major conferences and the power players in college football, but I saw this and thought, how are we finding the wrong solution again?
I don't know if you could read that.
Brian's writing things down. Spring cheating liability.
Let me define those three for you. This is how the reality of the world works. Since we're in a political year that's rather tumultuous, this kind of fits, but it's a lack of accountability on both parties' parts, by the way, just to get political for a second. They both suck in some way, and this is no different. The NCAA, with the liability, wants no part of this. Here's the issue. Teams are cheating like crazy, stealing people off other rosters. Did you see the post from Miami of Ohio's head coach?
Yeah, and my reaction was, I'm not surprised. Like, this happens all the time, or it could be as simple as, the portal opens tomorrow and a kid is going to go in and everyone knows he's going to go in, and a coach texts him the day before, or an hour before the portal goes live. Like, that's what tampering can be sometimes. Sometimes it can be more nefarious than that, but I don't know. Everyone's doing it.
The NCAA wants no responsibility for it because the bigger problem is in the spring. Here's the problem. The portal window ends after, or even starts after spring ball. If you've got a hole and you're like, you have no choice because there is no patience, -5 million with fans. What happens when you have even one bad season now? You can get fired. So these coaches do not care if they cheat. The NCAA wants no part of that liability because they're policing the people that pay them. It's a terrible system. So they're trying to get out of it. That's why they want to get rid of the spring window. So I'm sorry, it's just true. I hear enough about this directly in private conversations. I know I'm right. They don't want any part of it. On their side, I get it, but that just still makes you chicken, you know what. It drives me nuts. Yeah, Spencer doesn't like it, but it's still the main reason. I don't like it either.
No, I think if you had a proper college football calendar, you'd get rid of the early signing day, which happens during the season. You get rid of the transfer portal window, which happens during the season. You're going to think about this. the first round of the playoffs is like December 18th, December 20th or so. Coaches are going to be preparing for a national championship run in the college football playoff whilst trying to finalize their 2025 recruiting class. I know they have big staffs, but head coaches are involved with both. It makes no sense from a sports standpoint, from an athlete standpoint, coach standpoint, media standpoint. There's no logic to it whatsoever. You should let the season play out. Then you should allow the transfer portal to open. Then you should have National Signing Day. And if you want to have a second portal window in the spring, frankly, I don't have that big of a problem with it. But it's once again college football finding the wrong solutions to problems that kind of exist.
The coaches would go out with their own pitchforks and take out the NCAA if they cut the spring. Why? Because they want those players in their own spring practices.
Right.
If you cut that out, say they want that you cut out the December one, they want those players in spring. There's a lot of deals with these kids. If you can't get to my school, get enrolled, we don't want you. They want them in spring ball. So the December, there's zero chance that's going away. Guaranteed.
Brian Smith, Locked On Seminoles. Brian, appreciate the time.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, which will be later today as it turns out. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.